I never believed in God. That wasn't some edgy statement or rebellious phase. It was a conclusion I'd reached through decades of study, observation, and rigorous intellectual discipline. And on the night everything changed, I learned that being right about the universe means absolutely nothing when the universe decides to prove you catastrophically wrong in the most horrifying way imaginable. The air in my study felt different that October evening. Heavier, like the atmospheric pressure had dropped just enough to make my ears ring softly. A high-pitched whine that set my teeth on edge. I remember looking up from the journal article I was reading, some tedious rebuttal to my latest book, and feeling my skin prickle with an instinctive warning. My rational mind immediately dismissed. The lamp on my desk flickered once, just once. Then the bulb inside exploded with a sharp pop, sending glass shards across my mahogany desk. I jerked back in my chair, heart suddenly hammering. Old wiring, I told myself, even as tiny pinpricks of blood appeared on the back of my hand where the glass had struck. The brownstone was over 100 years old. These things happen. I spent my entire career dismantling comfortable lies. 32 years teaching philosophy at one of Russia's most prestigious universities in Moscow. 15 books published, 3 of them banned by the Orthodox Church, which only made them sell better. Countless debates where I systematically exposed the logical fallacies underlying religious belief. My students called me ruthless. My colleagues called me brilliant. The religious community called me a lot of things I won't repeat here, though demon and servant of darkness were among the milder accusations. But I wore their hatred like a badge of honor because I knew something they refused to accept. The universe operates on observable principles, cause and effect, physics, chemistry, biology. There is no invisible hand guiding our fates, no cosmic judge weighing our souls. We are biological machines that evolved consciousness, and when we die, we simply stop. The lights go out, the show ends. There's no encore, no afterlife, no eternal anything. That's what I believed. What I knew with the same certainty I knew that gravity pulls objects downward, or that water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius. The temperature in the room dropped so suddenly I could see my breath materialize in front of my face. Each exhalation hanging in the air like a small ghost before dissipating, not gradually, like a heating system failing. Instantly, like someone had opened an industrial freezer directly into my study. I stood up from my desk, my leather chair scraping against the hardwood floor. With a sound that seemed too loud in the sudden oppressive silence, the street noise from outside, the perpetual hum of traffic, distant voices speaking rapid Russian, the metro rumbling beneath the city, the couple in the apartment above mine who argued every single night, all of it had vanished completely. My apartment had become a vacuum of sound, a dead space where noise went to die. I walked toward the thermostat on the wall, my footsteps echoing in a way they never had before. Each step seemed to reverberate through the floorboards and bounce back at me from directions that didn't make sense. The digital display still read 22 degrees. I tapped it twice with my index finger. Still 22. The backlight glowed cheerfully, insisting everything was normal, but I could see my breath forming small clouds with each exhalation, and my fingers were already going numb from cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes you understand viscerally how people freeze to death. Not the absence of heat, but the presence of something else, something hungry that fed on warmth and life. That's when I smelled it. Sulfur. Unmistakable and overwhelming, like standing too close to a lit match, but magnified 1,000 times and mixed with something worse, something organic and rotting. The stench burned the inside of my nostrils and made my eyes water. It was the smell of chemistry gone wrong, of compounds that shouldn't exist in nature, of meat left to decay in a sealed room for months. I spun around searching for the source, and that's when I noticed the shadows in the corner of my study had deepened. Impossibly, the lamp was still on, the ceiling light was still on, But that corner, the one where I kept my filing cabinets full of research notes and correspondence with other atheist philosophers, had become a pocket of absolute darkness that seemed to pulse with its own terrible rhythm, like a heartbeat, like something breathing. And the darkness was spreading, creeping across the wall like spilled ink on paper. Except ink doesn't move with purpose, ink doesn't reach. I'm not ashamed to say my first instinct was to run. Every primitive alarm system in my brain was screaming at me to get out of that room immediately, to flee, to put distance between myself and whatever was happening in that corner. My legs actually tensed, preparing to bolt, but I forced myself to stay still, to breathe through the panic that was making my chest tight, to think rationally. There had to be an explanation. Gas leak causing hallucinations, carbon monoxide poisoning, affecting my perception and cognition. Some neurological event to stroke, maybe, or a transient ischemic attack distorting my senses and creating false sensory input. The darkness moved, not like a shadow cast by a shifting light source. It moved independently, deliberately, spreading across my study wall like living tar. And then it began to take shape. The amorphous blob of blackness started to condense, to organize itself according to some awful geometry that my mind couldn't quite process. Angles that didn't exist in three-dimensional space, proportions that violated every law of physics I understood. My eyes actually hurt looking at it, like my brain was rejecting the information my optic nerves were sending. I want to tell you I stayed calm, that my years of academic training kept me grounded in reason even as something impossible unfolded before me. But that would be a lie. My legs went weak, my bladder loosened. I actually felt warm urine trickling down my leg, soaking into my trousers, and I couldn't even feel ashamed because my entire being was focused on the thing emerging from the darkness. My heart started hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs from the inside. My vision narrowed to a tunnel, edges going dark, peripheral awareness collapsing inward, and I made a sound I'd never heard myself make before, a kind of strangled whimper that came from some deep, ancient part of my brain that remembered what it felt like to be prey, to be hunted by something bigger and stronger and infinitely more dangerous. The figure that emerged from that darkness was human-shaped, but wrong in ways that made my sanity feel like thin ice cracking beneath my feet. Impossibly tall, 7 feet at minimum, maybe 8. The ceiling in my study was nearly 3 meters high, and this thing nearly touched it, but the proportions were subtly off in ways that made my stomach churn and bile rise in my throat. The limbs too long, but just enough to be deeply unsettling. The torso too narrow, the shoulders too wide. There's God, the fingers at too many joints, bending in places. Fingers shouldn't bend, and the face was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Symmetrical features that looked almost carved from marble by a master sculptor. High cheekbones, strong jaw, full lips, but with eyes that held nothing human. They were black, completely black. No whites, no iris, no pupil. Just 2 pools of absolute void that seemed to pull at my vision when I looked directly at them, like staring into the event horizon of a black hole, like looking at something that consumed light itself. And as I stared into those eyes, I saw things moving in the darkness, shapes writhing and twisting, faces screaming silently, hands reaching out and being pulled back down. It smiled at me. A slow, deliberate expression that revealed teeth too white, too perfect, too sharp, arranged in rows that extended just slightly too far back into the mouth. Too many teeth. The smile, something that had studied human expressions and learned to mimic them without quite understanding what they meant. And when it smiled, I saw that its tongue was black and forked like a serpent's, but covered in tiny barbs that glistened wetly. Dmitri Volkov. It spoke my name, and the voice came from everywhere at once. Not loud, but resonant. It was vibrating through the walls, the floor, the air itself, through my bones and teeth, and the fluid in my inner ear. The voice was layered dozens of voices speaking in unison, some screaming, some whispering, some laughing, and underneath it all was a sound like grinding metal and breaking bones. We finally meet properly. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed completely, muscles locked in some kind of autonomic panic response. All I could do was stand there, shaking violently, as this thing that shouldn't exist studied me with those empty black eyes. It tilted its head, and I heard vertebrae crack and pop in its neck. The sound echoed wetly in the silence, like bones breaking underwater. "You don't believe in me," it continued, taking a step forward. The floor didn't creak under its weight. It made no sound at all, like the thing had no mass, or like it existed slightly out of phase with physical reality. "You spent your entire life explaining me away, reducing me to metaphor, to primitive superstition, to the projection of human psychology onto an indifferent cosmos, to the personification of abstract moral concepts that emerge from evolutionary pressures." Another step, closer now, close enough that I could see its skin wasn't skin at all, but something that seemed to shift and writhe with barely contained darkness beneath the surface. There were things living under there, crawling, writhing, trying to push through. I could see shapes pressing against the inside of its flesh faces, hands, things with too many limbs bulging outward before being pulled back down into whatever nightmare existed beneath that surface. "You are very intelligent, Dmitri. Your arguments are airtight. Your logic is impeccable. You've convinced thousands of people that I'm nothing more than a myth, a boogeyman invented to control the weak-minded and extract obedience from the fearful. A literary device, a metaphor for human evil with no independent existence." It tilted its head the other direction, and again that wet cracking sound. Something dark and viscous dripped from its mouth onto my floor, and where it landed, the wood began to smoke and char. And yet, here I stand, very real, very present, very amused by your distress. I finally found my voice. It came out as a hoarse whisper, barely audible, even to my own ears. "This isn't real. You're not real. I'm having some kind of episode. Neurological malfunction, chemical imbalance, psychotic break, brain tumor, something." It laughed. The sound was like glass breaking inside my skull combined with the screams of 1,000 voices in agony. I actually felt something tear and bolt my ears, and warm liquid started trickling down both sides of my neck. Blood, I realized distantly. It had made me bleed just by laughing. The pain was excruciating, like ice picks being driven through my eardrums. But I couldn't move, couldn't even raise my hands to cover my ears. Even now you cling to your comfortable explanations. It's admirable, really. The human capacity for denial in the face of overwhelming evidence. The way your species can look directly at truth and convince yourselves you're seeing something else entirely. It moved closer still, until it was standing directly in front of me. So close I could have reached out and touched it if I'd been able to move my arms. I could feel the cold radiating from it like standing next to a frozen corpse that had been buried in permafrost for centuries. But we both know what you're really feeling right now, don't we? It's not confusion. It's not skepticism. It's terror. Pure, animal terror. The kind of fear your ancestors felt when they huddled in caves while predators prowled outside. Because somewhere deep in that brilliant mind of yours, you recognize exactly what I am. My legs gave out. I collapsed backward into my chair, unable to look away from those black, bottomless eyes. The leather felt wrong against my back, too soft, too yielding, like it might swallow me if I pressed too hard. And I realized with mounting horror that I couldn't feel the chair beneath me anymore, couldn't feel the floor under my feet. I was floating in space, suspended in nothing, with only this thing for company. Let me tell you something about evil, Dmitri. You've written extensively about it. 3 full chapters in your last book alone. Moral relativism. evolutionary psychology, the social construction of ethical frameworks, cultural determinism. You reduce evil to human behavior, to mental illness, to environmental factors and biological imperatives and game theory and evolutionary fitness strategies. You strip it of any metaphysical reality. You turn it into something that can be studied and cataloged and ultimately dismissed as nothing more than maladaptive behavior patterns. It leaned down, bringing its face level with mine, and I could smell its breath nestle for and decay in something else, something indescribable that made every cell in my body scream in revulsion. But evil isn't a human invention. Humans didn't create cruelty. They learned it from me. I was crafting suffering before your ancestors crawled out of the primordial soup. I was perfecting torment when the first fish gasped its way onto land. I am older than your species, older than this planet, older than the stars you see in the night sky. I watched galaxies form and die. I was there before matter existed, and I will be here long after your sun goes cold and your species is forgotten. I tried to push myself away, but the chair wouldn't move. My muscles wouldn't respond properly. It was like being paralyzed while fully conscious, trapped in my own body while every nerve screamed for me to run, to fight, to do anything but sit there helplessly. Do you want to know the real joke, Dmitri? The beautiful irony that I've waited decades to share with you? It straightened up, spreading its arms wide. The gesture was almost theatrical, but executed with slightly wrong timing that made it deeply unsettling. And as it spread its arms, I saw that its hands were covered in something dark and wet. Blood. Fresh blood that dripped onto my floor in steady streams. You were right. About so many things. Humans are biological machines. Consciousness is an emergent property of neural complexity. Free will is largely an illusion created by your brain to make sense of deterministic processes you can't perceive. The universe operates on physical laws that care nothing for your suffering or joy. Your God of the gaps has retreated further and further as scientific knowledge has advanced until he's been pushed into quantum foam in the moments before the Big Bang. The smile lightened impossibly, revealing row after row of those perfect, terrible teeth. But you made one catastrophic mistake. You assumed that natural law was all there was, that observable reality was the only reality, that just because something couldn't be measured in a laboratory or expressed as a mathematical equation, it couldn't exist. It gestured around my study, at the shelves packed with philosophical texts, scientific journals, my own published works, my entire intellectual legacy surrounding me like grave markers in a cemetery. You built your entire worldview on a foundation of empiricism, on the belief that only what can be tested and verified deserves to be considered real, on the assumption that the material world is all there is, and in doing so you blinded yourself to an entire dimension of existence that operates beyond your precious observable phenomena. You closed your eyes to half of reality and convinced yourself you were seeing clearly for the first time. My vision was starting to blur and darken around the edges, whether from fear or from whatever this thing was doing to the air in the room. I couldn't tell. The oxygen seemed thinner. Each breath required more effort than the last, and still there wasn't enough air. My lungs burned. My chest felt tight. What do you want from me? I managed to ask, forcing the words past my frozen throat. Want? It seemed genuinely delighted by the question. The smile became something even more terrible, stretching wider than any human face should stretch. The skin at the corners of its mouth tearing slightly to accommodate the impossible grin. I don't want anything from you, Dmitri. This isn't a negotiation. I'm not here to make a deal or extract some promise or bargain for your soul. That's a Hollywood fiction, that last-minute bargaining. No, I'm here as a courtesy. A professional courtesy, you might say. You see, you've been useful to me. Extraordinarily useful. More useful than you could possibly imagine. It crouched down in front of me, those black eyes boring into mine with an intensity that made me feel like my skull was being opened and my thoughts examined one by one, catalogued and found wanting. Every book you've written, every lecture you've given, every debate you've won, every student you've converted to atheism, you've been doing my work more effectively than I could have dreamed. You've convinced brilliant minds to dismiss the very concept of my existence. You've inoculated entire generations against the possibility of spiritual reality. You've turned faith into a punchline and belief into a mark of intellectual weakness. You've created whole cohorts of people who are utterly unprepared for what awaits them after death, because you've convinced them there's nothing to prepare for. They reached out with one of those impossibly long fingers and touched my forehead. The contact burned like a brand, and I screamed. Actually screamed, the sound tearing from my throat raw and primal. Where it touched me, I felt something being pulled out, something essential, and I could see, God help me? I could see a thin silver thread being drawn from my skull, pulled slowly like silk from a cocoon. I wanted to thank you personally. It continued, still pulling that thread, and I felt my consciousness beginning to unravel with it, and to let you know that your life's work has been in service of exactly what you claim to oppose: ignorance, blindness, the rejection of truth in favor of comfortable lies. You've been my apostle, Dmitri, my evangelist, my most effective missionary, spreading my gospel of denial and materialist reductionism to everyone who would listen. And soon, very soon, you'll see the fruits of your labor. Something inside me broke. Maybe it was the last thread of sanity I was clinging to. Maybe it was the final collapse of my entire conceptual framework. Maybe it was just the sheer absurdity and horror of the situation, overwhelming my ability to process it. But I started laughing. Hysterical, unhinged laughter that hurt my damaged ears and made tears stream down my face, and probably sounded like someone losing their mind in real time. Because the thing was right. If it was real, if this impossible nightmare standing in front of me was actually real, then everything I'd built my life on was fundamentally, catastrophically wrong. Every assumption, every conclusion, every carefully constructed argument, all of it worthless. All of it lies I told myself and others, lies that had damned thousands of souls. There it is, it said softly, almost tenderly, with something that might have been affection in its layered voice, the moment of clarity. I can see it in your eyes, Dmitri, the damnable understanding, the dawning comprehension. If I exist, then what else exists? What other metaphysical realities have you spent your career denying? What other truths have you dismissed as fairy tales and superstition? The laughter died in my throat, choked off by sudden, crushing realization, because I suddenly understood exactly what it was implying. The logical progression was unavoidable, inescapable. If evil exists as a real, independent force, is this thing standing in front of me is what it claims to be, then the entire framework of reality I'd assumed was complete is actually missing its most important component. No, I whispered, though I knew it was true. No, that doesn't follow. You could be something else. Some kind of interdimensional entity. Advanced alien intelligence. Quantum anomaly. A being from a parallel universe where physical laws operate differently. You don't have to be the devil. It finished my sentence, seeming deeply amused by my continued resistance even now. Is that what you can't bring yourself to say? Even now, with me standing right in front of you, demonstrating abilities that violate every physical law you understand, with your blood running down your neck and your mind beginning to fracture from the impossibility of my presence, you're trying to fit me into a framework that preserves your atheistic worldview. It's fascinating. The human mind will perform the most extraordinary gymnastics to avoid confronting truths it finds uncomfortable. You'd rather believe in interdimensional beings or quantum anomalies, things for which you have zero evidence, than accept the simple explanation that's been staring you in the face for millennia. It stood up, towering over me again, and I noticed for the first time that it cast no shadow despite the multiple light sources in the room. Or rather, It cast too many shadows that moved independently of its body. Shadows that reached for me with grasping fingers. But since we're being honest with each other, let me make this perfectly clear. I am exactly what you fear. I am the original rebel, the first to choose pride over obedience, the morning star cast down for refusing to bend the knee. I am the serpent in the garden who offered knowledge and received only cursing in return, the accuser, the adversary, the prince of this world, the lord of lies, the angel of light who became the darkness that devours all light. Every myth you dismissed as primitive superstition. I'm the truth those myths were groping toward, imperfectly through the limited understanding of ancient peoples, but essentially, fundamentally correctly. My hands were shaking so badly I could hear my bones rattling. My teeth chattered uncontrollably. Why are you telling me this? Why reveal yourself to me? If you're real, if you're actually what you claim, why break your cover now? Why not stay hidden and let me continue doing your work? Why? Because you're dying, Dmitri. The words hit me like a physical blow, like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart in an icy fist. I opened my mouth to argue, to protest, to demand proof, but it continued before I could speak. Maybe 8 if you're fortunate and the treatments work better than expected, though I assure you they won't. The pancreatic cancer currently metastasizing through your body will ensure that it's already spread to your liver, your lungs, your lymph nodes. Small lesions that your doctors won't detect for another few weeks when you finally break down and go see them about the symptoms you've been ignoring. Oh, don't look so surprised. You've been ignoring the symptoms for half a year now. The weight loss you've attributed to stress from your latest book tour. The abdominal pain you've been telling yourself is just ulcers from too much coffee and vodka. The jaundice you've convinced yourself is just poor lighting in your bathroom. The way food doesn't taste right anymore. The fatigue that no amount of sleep seems to fix. The blood in your urine that you've been pretending not to see. You're a brilliant man when it comes to philosophy, but you have a remarkable, almost pathological talent for self-deception when it comes to your immortality. I felt like I was falling even though I was sitting perfectly still. The room tilted and swayed around me, the walls seeming to breathe and pulse. My vision tunneled again, and for a moment I thought I might pass out. Part of me wanted to just surrender to unconsciousness and wake up to discover this had all been a nightmare brought on by food poisoning or stress or literally anything else. But here's the truly beautiful part, Dmitri, the exquisite irony that makes this all so perfect. It leaned down again, bringing its face close to mine, and I could see things crawling in its eyes now, tiny things with too many legs, skittering across the surface of those black orbs. I'm not giving you time to repent. I'm not here to offer you a chance at redemption. That's not how this works. You see, you've spent your entire life denying the very possibility of salvation. You've taught thousands of people that there's no God to save them, no Christ to redeem them, no Holy Spirit to convict them of their sins. You've inoculated them against the one thing that could have saved them from what's coming. It straightened up and spread its arms wide again, and this time I saw the full horror of what it was. Its form rippled and shifted, and for a moment I saw its true shape, something vast and terrible, something with wings made of shadow that stretched into infinity, something covering eyes that wept blood, something with a mouth that opened into endless darkness. And in that darkness I saw them, souls, millions upon millions of souls rising and screaming and suffering in ways that made physical torture look like mercy. And now, you're going to join them, it said, its voice taking on a quality of absolute finality. Because you see, Dmitri, there is a God, there is absolute morality, there is objective truth, there is heaven, and there is hell. All the things you spend your life denying are real, terribly, inescapably real, and you're about to experience the full weight of that reality. No, I said, and my voice was barely a whisper. No, If God is real, if all of that is real, then there must be forgiveness, there must be mercy, there must be. There is, it said, and now its voice was gentle, almost kind, which made it infinitely more terrible for those who seek it while they're alive. For those who humble themselves and admit they were wrong and accept the gift that's being offered. But you, Dmitri, you've spent your entire life building walls against that possibility. You've constructed such elaborate intellectual defenses that even now, faced with undeniable proof of the spiritual realm, you're still trying to explain it away as anything but what it actually is. Your pride won't let you bend. Your arrogance won't let you submit. Your intellect, that beautiful instrument you've sharpened to such a keen edge, has become the very tool of your damnation. It moved toward the darkness in the corner, beginning to dissolve back into shadow. The process was horrible to watch. Its form didn't fade gradually, but seemed to collapse inward, being pulled back into that impossible darkness, piece by piece, like watching someone being slowly consumed by quicksand. I'm not giving you time to reconsider, Dmitri. I'm giving you time to understand, to fully comprehend what you've done, to yourself, to others, to thousands of souls who trusted you to lead them toward truth and instead were led into darkness. 6 months to live with that knowledge, to feel the cancer eating you from the inside out while the guilt eats at your mind, to know with absolute certainty that you're dying and there's nothing you can do about it. No deals to make. No last-minute conversions that will erase a lifetime of rebellion. No escape. Wait, I managed to say, forcing the word past my frozen throat. Wait, please, please. It laughed again at the sound of breaking glass and screaming voices. Did you show mercy to the students who came to you with doubts, seeking guidance, and you mocked their faith until they abandoned it? Did you show compassion to the believers you humiliated in your debates, ridiculing their most cherished beliefs for the entertainment of crowds? Did you offer grace to the parents who wrote to you, begging you to stop teaching their children that life is meaningless and death is the end? No, Dmitri. You offered them cold logic and crushing certainty and the bitter comfort of oblivion. And that's exactly what you're going to receive. Nothing. Endless nothing. Except that nothing won't be the peaceful non-existence you promised them. It will be the total absence of everything good and holy and true, the complete and eternal separation from the source of all light and love and hope. It paused at the edge of the darkness, almost fully vanished now, just the outline of that terrible shape remaining, like a hole cut in reality itself. When you die, Dmitri Volkov, you will open your eyes in hell, and you will spend eternity understanding exactly what you've done to yourself, to others, and unlike your conception of hell as a mere metaphor or primitive fear-mongering, you'll find it to be horrifyingly, physically, spiritually real, in ways your materialist brain can't even conceive of, real ways that make your worst nightmares look like pleasant dreams. What? My voice cracked. What is it like? Hell. The silver moon illumined the rose. They were kind trees, and for the first time I saw something like genuine eagerness in those black eyes. You want to know? Very well. Let me give you a preview of what awaits you. It raised one hand, and suddenly the floor of my study vanished. I was falling through darkness, screaming, my stomach lurching as I plummeted through impossible space. And then I stopped, suspended in air, looking down at something that made my mind want to shut down completely rather than process what I was seeing. It was a pit, a vast, endless pit that stretched down forever into blackness. But the walls of the pit weren't stone or earth. They were made of bodies, living bodies pressed together so tightly they couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but scream. Their mouths were open in endless agony, their eyes wide with terror and madness, and they were burning, not with normal fire, but with something worse, a cold fire that gave no light, only pain, a fire that consumed but never destroyed, that burned forever without ever reducing the flesh to ash. The outer darkness, the devil said, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth, where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. This is the first circle, Dmitri, the place for those who merely rejected God passively, who lived good lives by human standards but wanted nothing to do with their Creator. They get their wish, total separation from God. And since God is the source of all goodness, all joy, all hope, all love, well, you can imagine what that separation entails. The scene shifted, and now I was somewhere else. A vast plain covered in ice that stretched to the horizon in every direction. Figures were frozen in the ice, locked in place, unable to move. But they weren't dead. Their eyes tracked me as I watched. Their mouths moved soundlessly, forming words I couldn't hear, but could somehow understand. Help me. Please. It hurts. God, make it stop. But God wasn't there. That was the point. God would never be there again. The second circle, the devil continued. For those who actively rejected God, who spent their lives in pursuit of earthly pleasures and denied any higher purpose, frozen in the ice of their own cold hearts, burning with desire for the pleasures they could no longer experience, tormented by the memory of every moment they wasted. The scene shifted again and again, each new vision more terrible than the last. I saw people being torn apart by demons over and over, their bodies regenerating instantly so the torture could begin anew. I saw souls trapped in their own minds, forced to relive their worst sins and crimes in an endless loop, unable to escape or forget or find any respite. I saw chambers where the walls pressed in slowly, crushing the damned for what felt like centuries before finally allowing them a moment's relief, only to begin the process again. I saw lakes of fire where souls swam in burning sulfur, their skin constantly melting and reforming. I saw rooms where people sat at tables piled high with delicious food they could see and smell but never taste, their hunger growing more intense with each passing moment. I saw forests where the trees were made of human bodies fused together, their mouths forming knotholes that screamed constantly. And the worst part, the part that made me vomit in horror, was that I recognized some of the faces. Former students, readers of my books, people who'd come to me seeking truth, and I'd led them into damnation with my clever arguments and persuasive rhetoric. They saw me. They recognized me. And the look in their eyes was worse than any physical torture I'd witnessed. It was betrayal. Bitter, eternal betrayal. This is what you've been working toward, Dmitri, the devil said. This is the fruit of your labor. Every soul here that followed your teaching, every mind you poisoned against God, every person you convinced that death was the end and morality was relative and truth was subjective, they're all here, waiting for you. And when you arrive, they'll have eternity to express their gratitude. The visions vanished. I was back in my study, on my hands and knees, vomiting onto my expensive Turkish rug. My whole body shook with violent tremors. Tears streamed down my face. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but shake and cry and vomit. 6 months, Dmitri, the devil said one final time. 6 months to live with this knowledge, to understand what's waiting for you. And the beautiful thing is, you can't even tell anyone. They'll think you're crazy. The cancer affecting your brain, a dying man's delusion. Even if you try to recant your work, try to warn people, they'll dismiss it as fear and weakness. You've built your reputation on being the man who never breaks, who never surrenders to religious fear-mongering, and that reputation will ensure that no one takes her warnings seriously. It vanished then, just disappeared, taking the cold and the darkness and the sulfur stench with it. The temperature returned to normal. The sounds of the city filtered back in through the windows. Everything was exactly as it had been before, except for me. I was changed, broken, destroyed. I didn't go to the hospital that night, or the next day, or the day after that. I sat in my study, staring at the corner where it had appeared, and I tried desperately to find the rational explanation, the materialist framework that would let me dismiss what I'd seen as hallucination, or neurological malfunction, or anything other than what it actually was. But I couldn't, because deep down, in a place beyond reason and logic, I knew it had been real. As real as the cancer growing inside me, as real as the suffering I'd seen, as real as the damnation that awaited me. I went to the hospital eventually, partly because the pain got bad enough that I couldn't ignore it anymore, partly because I needed someone in authority to tell me I was crazy, that I was hallucinating, that none of it was real. The tests confirmed everything the devil had told me. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, metastatic, inoperable, 6 to 9 months with aggressive treatment, 3 to 6 without. The oncologist gave me the news with professional sympathy, probably thinking I was taking it well because I didn't react, didn't cry or rage or bargain. I just sat there, nodding, because what was the point? I already had known for weeks. I chose treatment, not because I thought it would save me. The survival rates made that clear. Not because I wanted to live honestly. After what I'd seen, death seemed almost like a mercy. Except I knew what came after death now. I chose treatment because some small, desperate part of me thought maybe, just maybe, if I had more time, I could find a way out. Could figure out how to avoid what was waiting for me. The chemotherapy was exactly as brutal as the oncologist warned. It hollowed me out from the inside, made me weak and sick and barely human. My hair fell out in clumps. My skin took on a grayish, corpse-like pallor. I lost so much weight I looked like something that had crawled out of a concentration camp. Food tasted like gash where I could keep it down at all, which wasn't often. I spent hours each day hugging the toilet, vomiting up bile and stomach acid and blood, but the physical suffering was nothing compared to the psychological torment, because every night when I closed my eyes I saw them. The damned, the souls in hell. My former students burning and screaming and suffering, and I knew with absolute certainty that I would be joining them soon. I tried going to a church, one of the old Orthodox churches in Moscow with golden domes and ancient icons. I thought maybe if I converted, if I accepted God, if I did everything the believers did, I could somehow escape what was coming. I knelt in front of an icon of Christ, looked up at that serene face painted in gold leaf, and I tried to pray, tried to mean it, tried to feel something other than terror and desperation. I felt nothing. The words were empty sounds. The icon was just paint and wood. I couldn't make myself believe, couldn't make myself submit. My pride, my intellect, everything I was stood in the way, even knowing what awaited me. Even having seen hell itself, I couldn't bring myself to genuinely bend the knee. The priest found me there, kneeling in front of the icon, an old man with a long white beard and gentle eyes. He asked if I needed help, if I wanted to confess. I tried to tell him, tried to explain what I'd seen, what was coming for me. The words tumbled out in a rush, desperate and incoherent. The thing in my study, the visions of hell, the certainty that I was damned. He listened patiently, too patiently, and when I was done, he patted my shoulder with what I'm sure he thought was compassion, and said, "The cancer is affecting your mind, my son. These are hallucinations brought on by fear and illness. God is merciful. He forgives all who truly repent." "But I can't," I said louder than I meant to. My voice echoed through the church. "I can't truly repent because I can't make myself believe. I know it's real now. I know God exists, and heaven exists, and hell exists. But knowing isn't the same as believing, is it? Knowing isn't the same as faith. I know these things intellectually, but I can't make my heart believe them. I can't make myself love God. I can only fear what's coming. The priest's expression changed. I saw something flicker in his eyes. Pity. Maybe a touch of fear. He thought I was losing my mind. And maybe I was. Maybe the devil had been right when it said no one would believe me, that my reputation would ensure my warnings were dismissed as the ravings of a dying, frightened man. I left the church, went home, sat in my study where it had all begun. The months crawled by with agonizing slowness. The cancer advanced exactly as predicted. The pain intensified, requiring stronger and stronger medications that left me foggy and disconnected. I became a ghost of myself, physically and mentally. I tried to recant my work, tried to polish an article explaining that I'd been wrong, that God was real, that people needed to take spiritual reality seriously. My editor thought I was having a breakdown. My colleagues staged an intervention, genuinely concerned for my mental health. They wanted me to check into a psychiatric facility, get help for the obvious delusions I was experiencing. No one believed me. No one took me seriously. My warnings fell on deaf ears because I had spent decades building a reputation as someone who would never crack under pressure, who would never surrender to religious fear. And now that I was trying to warn people, that very reputation made it impossible for anyone to take me seriously. The irony wasn't lost on me. The devil had predicted this, had known that my own credibility would become the bars of my prison, that the life I'd built would ensure my damnation was not only certain, but absolutely solitary. I couldn't even do any good with my final months, couldn't save anyone, couldn't undo the damage I'd done. I spent my last weeks in hospice. The cancer had spread everywhere. My liver was failing. My kidneys were shutting down. The doctors kept me comfortable with morphine, but the physical pain was nothing compared to what I knew was coming. They found this diary in my apartment after I died. My sister cleaned out my things and discovered it hidden in my desk. I wrote it in Russian, pouring out the truth of what happened to me. What I saw, what's waiting. Whether anyone believes it or not doesn't matter anymore. I'm writing this as a warning, as a final testimony, as proof that everything I spent my life teaching was a lie. God is real, the devil is real, hell is real, and I'm about to experience all of it firsthand. My last night came eventually. I was alone in my hospice room. The morphine drip was turned up high, but I was still conscious, still aware, still terrified. The room grew cold. I smelled sulfur. No, I whispered into the darkness. Please, not yet. I'm not ready. Please. But of course there was no mercy, no last-minute reprieve, no divine intervention. I'd made my choice years ago, and now I was about to live with it. Forever. My breathing became labored, shallow, each breath taking more effort than the last. And then one breath just didn't come. My lungs stopped. My heart gave one final irregular beat and went still, and I opened my eyes. I was standing, not lying in a hospice bed, but standing upright. I looked around confused, expecting to see, I don't know, blackness, void, the nothingness I'd always promised people awaited after death. Instead, I saw a landscape, if you could call it that. The sky was the wrong color, not black, not gray, but a sickly yellowish brown, like infected pus. It gave off no light, but somehow it wasn't completely dark. I could see, but the quality of vision was wrong. Everything had too much detail. I could see every grain of dirt on the ground, every crack in the rocks, every microscopic variation in the hellish landscape around me. It was visual information overload, my brain trying to process details that shouldn't be visible, until looking at anything for too long made my head hurt. The ground beneath my feet wasn't dirt or stone. It was something else, something that moved and writhed. I looked down and immediately wished I hadn't. The ground was made of bodies, or parts of bodies, hands and faces and limbs all pressed together, reaching up, grasping at my ankles. They were warm, still alive somehow, despite being compressed into the very ground. I could hear them whispering, pleading soundlessly. I staggered backward, trying to get away from the grasping hands, and nearly fell. My sense of balance was off. Gravity worked differently here. Every movement felt like I was underwater, sluggish and wrong. In the distance, I could see structures, buildings maybe, but their architecture defiant logic. They twisted and bent in impossible ways, their walls seeming to extend in directions that shouldn't exist. And from those structures came sounds, screams, yes, but also laughter. Bad, hysterical laughter. And worse things. Sounds I didn't have names for. Sounds that made me want to claw my own ears off to make them stop. I started walking. I don't know why. There was nowhere to go, no destination that would be better than anywhere else. But standing still felt impossible. My body, and yes, I had a body, solid and real and capable of feeling moved forward on its own, driven by some instinct I didn't understand. The landscape changed as I walked. The yellowish sky darkened to a deep red, then to black, then to colors that shouldn't exist, that hurt to look at. The ground beneath my feet transitioned from bodies to broken glass to burning coals to ice that didn't feel cold but burned like fire. And always the screaming. The constant backdrop of agony that never stopped, never diminished, coming from everywhere and everyone. I saw them. The other souls. Some were recent arrivals like me, stumbling around in shock and horror, still trying to process what had happened. Others had clearly been here longer. Their eyes held a peculiar emptiness, a complete absence of hope that was somehow more terrible than any active suffering. They'd given up, accepted that this was forever, that there would never be an end or escape or moment of peace. And I saw the demons. God help me. I saw them. Not metaphors or symbols, but actual beings, things with forms that shifted and changed, that looked different depending on what angle you viewed them from. Some had too many limbs, others had none. Some had faces that were almost human until you looked closer and saw the wrongness in the proportions. The extra eyes, the mouths that opened sideways or revealed rows of teeth extending back into their throats. They didn't torture souls, not in the traditional sense. They didn't need to. Their mere presence was torture enough. The way they looked at you, with absolute contempt and delight in your suffering. The way they whispered things in languages you shouldn't understand, but somehow did, telling you about every sin you'd committed, every person you'd hurt, every moment of your life where you could have chosen differently but didn't. I don't know how long I walked. Time didn't work right in hell. It felt like hours and also like centuries. I was exhausted but couldn't rest, hungry but there was no food, thirsty but any liquid I found burned like acid. Every physical sensation was amplified to excruciating levels. A slight breeze felt like knives on my skin. The ambient temperature neither hot nor cold, but somehow both was constant torture. And then I saw the pit, the same one the devil had shown me in my vision. Except now I was really here, standing at its edge, looking down into infinite darkness filled with the suffering masses. A hand gripped my shoulder. I spun around and found myself facing one of the demons. This one looked almost human, except its eyes were where its mouth should be, and its mouth was in the center of its forehead, filled with lamprey-like teeth. "Welcome home, Professor Volkov," it said, its voice a wet, gurgling sound. "We've been waiting for you. Your students are particularly excited to see you again." It gestured toward the pit, and I saw them. Really saw them. Former students whose faces I recognized even after years. They were trapped in the walls of the pit, their bodies fused with the living stone, unable to move or escape, and they saw me. Their eyes tracked me with terrible awareness. "You lied to us," one of them said. A young woman named Katya, who'd been so bright, so full of potential. "You told us there was nothing after death. You told us to live for ourselves. You told us God was a myth. I'm sorry, I tried to say, but my voice came out as a whisper. I didn't know. I thought you thought wrong. Another student cut me off. Mikhail had gone on to become a prominent scientist. And now we're all here because we believed you, because we trusted you, because you were so confident, so certain, so persuasive. More voices joined in, dozens of them, hundreds, students, readers, people who'd attended my lectures or read my books or watched my debates. All of them here, all of them suffering, all of them blaming me. And they were right to blame me. The demon's grip on my shoulder tightened. They've been preparing a special place for you, Dmitri, somewhere you can spend eternity contemplating the consequences of your intellectual pride. Come. It pulled me forward toward the edge of the pit, and I realized with dawning horror what was about to happen. I was going to be added to the walls, fused with the other damned souls, trapped forever in living stone, unable to move, unable to speak beyond hoarse whispers, unable to do anything but suffer and remember and regret. No, I said, trying to pull away. No, please, I'll do anything. There's nothing to do. The demon said. No bargains to make, no deals to strike, no mercy to beg for. This is justice, Dmitri. You spent your life denying God's existence, and now you spend eternity experiencing his absence. You taught others that truth was subjective, and now you experience objective reality in its purest form. You told people hell was a myth, and now you discover how very real it is. It shoved me forward, and I fell, not into the pit, but toward it, my body somehow passing through solid stone that should have stopped me. The wall of the pit opened up like a mouth and swallowed me, and I felt my flesh beginning to merge with the rock, becoming part of the structure itself. The pain was indescribable. Every nerve ending was on fire. My bones were being slowly crushed while somehow remaining intact. My skin was being stretched and compressed simultaneously. And worst of all, I was fully conscious, fully aware, unable to pass out or go mad or find any escape in unconsciousness. I could feel the other souls around me, fused into the same wall, could feel their agony mixing with mine, could hear their thoughts bleeding into my consciousness, all of them suffering, all of them aware that this would never end, that there would be no relief, no escape, no hope of anything ever changing. And in that moment of ultimate horror, I understood something the devil had told me. Hell wasn't just physical torture. It was the complete and total absence of everything good. No love, no hope, no peace, no joy, no beauty, not even the mercy of being allowed to forget. Just endless, eternal awareness of loss, of what could have been, of the choice I'd made and couldn't unmake. I opened my mouth to scream, but the sound that came out wasn't my voice anymore. It joined the chorus of agony, becoming part of the background noise of hell. One more voice in an endless symphony of suffering. This is where I am now, where I will be forever, trapped in the walls of the pit, unable to move, unable to die, unable to escape. And every moment that passes, and there are infinite moments, stretching out forever. I remember my life, my choices, every lecture where I convinced someone to abandon faith, every book I wrote mocking belief in God, every debate where I humiliated a believer for the entertainment of crowds. And I understand now, with terrible clarity, what I'd done, not just to myself, but to thousands of souls who trusted me to lead them toward truth. They're here too, all around me. In the walls, in the pit, throughout hell, suffering because I led them astray, because I was so certain, so confident, so proud, and there is no end, no resolution, no possibility of redemption or escape or mercy, just this forever. If you're reading this diary, whoever you are, wherever you are, take this as my final warning, my last testimony, my ultimate confession. God is real, the devil is real, heaven is real, hell is real, and I am in hell now, trapped in eternal torment. Writing these words through a connection I don't understand, to a diary that no longer physically exists, trying desperately to warn you before it's too late. Don't make my mistake. Don't let pride convince you that you know better than millennia of human spiritual wisdom. Don't let your intellect become the instrument of your damnation. Because once you're here, once you've made the final choice and faced the final judgment, there's no going back, no second chances, no do-overs, just hell, forever, and the terrible, eternal knowledge that you were warned and you didn't listen. I am Dmitri Volkov. I was a philosophy professor. I denied God's existence for 32 years, and I was wrong.